Just so you know, Mo, I joined like 8 seconds before you did, apparently.
Oh, well, that makes me feel better because I can't read calendars and thought this was
We should both feel really bad.
you're clearly the most competent people.
All right.
So yeah, so the link to the agenda is in the chat now, and I put a bunch of items in there based on the work on the enhancement update that I worked on. I basically noted a bunch of to-dos in the CAP PR and just put them in the agenda here. I think that we touched some of the topics on the previous meeting, but I think that we could now try to define more clearly what we would like to do in each of these areas.
Yep.
Who will be the screen sharer?
You did it last time. I thought you were very successful.
Okay.
If you would like to do it again, that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, you should be able to see my screen now.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, this is the agenda, and I think we can start right off from the top. So one of the things that we discussed was, do we actually want people to be able to disable the feature? And I guess like what would be the reason for them to do so to decrease their security on nodes, right?
Disk usage, which I don't think would be huge, but that's like theoretically something.
So the main reason I can think of is someone who's running their nodes at the edge, right? And they sort of expect a homogeneous level of access across all the pods running on the node. And so partitioning authentication is not a priority for them. And robust availability, even with flaky connections to every remote thing that exists, is a priority for them. I don't think this is a high priority, but if the configuration that lets the admin say, like, here's the node, here's the images that I don't care about you like revalidating credentials for, if we already have a configuration like that, I'm not necessarily opposed to like having some level of wildcarding so that they could just say, which images should I not re-verify? Star. Like, I think we already need to give admins a way to enumerate the images so that they can say exactly these images or exactly images from these registries, something like that. If they could use the same config to just wildcard and say, like, don't re-verify for star. That it doesn't necessarily bother me to let them do that. So that's effectively disabling the feature, right?
Right.
But it's disabling it by explicitly putting every image that exists in the don't re-verify credentials bucket.
Yeah, I suppose that then like this is just a question of the API, right? Do we have a field that says yes or no, or do we have a field that says ignore all of these images? But in general, like both of these approaches allow the same. Only the second one is probably just a little bit easier on the API.
So I wouldn't make the implementation really complicated to support this.
Yeah.
I wouldn't make the configuration really complicated to support this. But if there's a trivial way in the implementation and in the configuration that we sort of already have to have if we're going to give the admin the ability to allow list the images that should be exempt, letting them go one step further and allow list star, like that doesn't bother me. So I don't know. Peter, what do you think?
Yeah, my main thought is for the brevity of or like the conciseness of the number of kubelet configuration fields. So it would be my preference to like add, because there was a moment in the enhancement, I didn't look at it this morning, but yesterday it seemed like there was a moment where it was like there could have been one enum field saying like, here are the options, and then one sort of wildcard field saying, if you chose the wildcard option, here's what we would use. I think it's sounding like we may be able to get away with just the wildcard option, and that would be my preference.
That sounds good to me.
Okay.
Okay, I think that covers the first item, which is some of the light one, I think.
Quick question on this. So I'm trying to remember in the credential plugin stuff for kubelet, the caching logic and say like, this credential is good for like this registry, this image, and some other stuff. The reason I bring it up is in a sense, those are kind of like wildcards around like where credentials can be used. And I don't know if like the same kind of shape should be provided for this API, or if we think purely like string manipulation on like image names. I assume like we'd have to have some mechanism for you to say this image, but I don't care what digest the image has or what tag the image has. And I don't know if that's like wildcard as much as it is like this is the image and I didn't specify that piece, right? Like I don't want to overcomplicate the API, but at the same time, I'm not sure if like just pure string manipulation is like the greatest approach for clarity of what would you intend to do with this config.
I feel like suffix globbing is probably sufficient.
So if you specified like, I don't know, Nginx as the image, what does that mean? Any version of Nginx? Does it only mean like latest? Like what does that mean exactly? Because there's no glob, right? It's just like Nginx, the image. That's kind of what I want to make sure like it's clear what you're actually saying.
Yeah.
I think it, feel free to disagree with me on this. I think it would be a reasonable limitation to expect a fully qualified manifest, not necessarily with the digest, but like say like, docker.io/nginx, and that, we expect like having a short name for this, I think could get us into tricky situations. So
Yeah.
The admin knows they don't really need the short name because they know what images they're trying to do this for.
Yeah. Tag and digest, I'm super fuzzy about it. It seems really strange to me to say like I'm totally fine with tag foo or digest foo of this image being used anonymously, but tag bar or digest bar, like no, that's super confidential.
right.
Like
Yeah, I think it should be like a domain,
so
not
like
ignoring the tag and digest piece.
fully. So yeah, I think ignore tag and digest, and so like the simplest version is fully specified registry sub bucket if there is one, image name, like fully specified image name, exclude tag or digest. And we can validate that on kubelet startup. Like if you try to put tags or digests in there, you can just say like, no, this only supports like the image registry plus image name.
There's a name for it in the image spec, and I forget.
I'm sure there's yeah, I'm so fuzzy on the image parsing, but so no tag or digest in this list. That's the minimum or the simplest version. You just here are the images, fully qualified images that we don't re-verify. I think having a saying that this registry is my public images registry is like plausible. So like public images.example.com/star. So that's why I was saying like suffix globbing I think is sufficient, and we would just match against the image. And then at the limit, suffix globbing reduces to star, where star is the whole string, and that suffix glob matches against every registry on every image and effectively disables the feature.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because I think the top level domain is going to be like the most filtering mechanism. You know, they might have some sort of private registry that they would allow everything from, but they wouldn't allow it from, or actually the other way around. That's a question that I had. Are we going allow list or deny list with this field? And I think we should probably just muscle through that.
Yeah, so an enumerated list is optional. If they don't provide it, the default behavior is pre-existing images are allowed by default. So that was like the mode. Like what mode are we operating in? And one mode is allow all pre-listed images, or pre-existing images, or whatever we call them. The other mode is only allow enumerated images, and when you're in that mode, you have to enumerate the ones that get allowed.
So that would make it a allow list.
Right. So an admin can opt into providing an allow list if they are aware of which images or which registries they want to, allow list, or they want to disable it disable verification entirely. They're like, allow enumerated images star.
And so this is only for pre-existing images. This list.
Yep. Yeah, I think we're slowly sliding into the second topic, and that is like, how do we handle the pre-existing images, right? And in the pull request, we were talking about 3 modes plus the fourth one, which basically disables the feature. But I would stick with 3, and those were always verify, ignore listed image tags, images, registries, as we just discussed, and then never verify, right? Do you think that we should keep these 3, or is like the one that says always verify, like would we even want this one?
Yeah, I mean, a very paranoid admin would be worried about like corruption of the state file. That's like a big case that I think of when I would imagine someone who's very paranoid, because a qubit would have trouble differentiating between pre-existing images and images that were formerly pulled with authentication, but qubit got confused about it.
Yeah, I mean, supporting all the ends of the spectrum, like the one that lets us default it on is never verify. The one that a super paranoid person, they're like, I don't want to, like, the always verify you could sort of model as like only enumerated images and then don't include anything in the list, but that's a weird configuration. It's if your intent is always verify, I think it's better to just have a mode that's like always verify. And then the one in the middle is, I know exactly which images or registries are okay. I'm going to give you the list. So having the endpoints and then having the middle one where they give us a list of matchers seems that seems sensible.
Right, and we need the default, which is the last one, of course, right?
Yeah. The if this only applies to pre-existing images, not images that the kubelet pulled and had some bookkeeping about, then this configuration does not actually let them completely disable re-verification.
Yeah, it doesn't work for that edge
we would
case,
need.
right?
Like I said, I'm on the fence about whether completely disabling re-verification for images the kubelet pulled is a thing we should really prioritize. if it fell out nicely in the config and we didn't have to add more config surface for it, I wouldn't object to it. I don't know if that's a config knob like we need. I would be okay with saying skip it for now and get feedback and see what people say during the beta when this is on by default.
Yeah, I think I would ask for when you put the allow list to star, is the intent to basically go back to the old behavior?
Well, that's the thing. Like if the allow list is which images do you want to skip credential re-verification for? Then yeah, star would mean go back to the old behavior. If the allow list is which pre-existing images that the kubelet doesn't know anything about do you want to skip verification for, then you're not going back to the old behavior.
Right. Yeah. I'm
trying to think what does it mean if the admin is like skip credential re-verification for image foo. Image foo doesn't exist on the node. Some pod tries to run it, the kubelet tries to pull it. It gets pulled anonymously, or maybe it gets pulled with like node level credentials, or maybe it gets pulled with pod level credentials. And then the next time some other pod tries to run it, the kubelet, it's like, well, the admin said image foo, I shouldn't worry about authenticating. Like, I can't decide if the admin is saying don't verify this. I don't know. I don't know what they would expect. When you get into wildcards, I think it's going to be a little confusing. Like half the admins are going to be like, I told you not to re-verify anything. Why are you pinging my registry for this thing? And the other half are going to be like, no, that was only for pre-existing images. So I think the safer interpretation is this allow list is only for pre-existing images, and things that the kubelet pulled, it still re-verifies. If we want to give people a way to turn it off entirely, maybe we'll get that feedback during beta, and we'll add like another thing to disable entirely.
So I guess if you need this functionality, could you create like a privileged daemon set, run it on all your nodes that sits there and pulls the images in an unverified way?
What?
So say your like basically if you wanted the old behavior, you would set it to star and arrange to have the images pre-populated basically in a way the kubelet doesn't know about.
No, that's not reasonable. Like you're going to pre-populate every image every pod might ever run. That's
I guess that's
well, I think the way to get the old behavior is not have any like private creds, basically, is like, pull from public places, and then the kubelet always knows that it was pulled from a public place.
I don't have enough experience with people running like edge nodes in poor connectivity situations.
Yeah, so the thing I can think of is edge nodes with GPUs attached that run proprietary images that have strict licensing requirements and thus do require threads to pull them.
So maybe they can't preload them because like there's like bundling licensing restrictions, like they have to pull them. But once they pull them, I don't know. We can invent scenarios. I just don't know enough to know how someone in this scenario would expect to be able to run things. Another option is to have another enum. So it's the same enum field. Like what mode are we running in? And one is like never verify any image ever. Or never re-verify any image ever. And that actually does turn off the feature. But that's not what we would default to. We would default to like never re-verify pre-existing images. So maybe that's just a fourth enum that actually does let you turn off the feature.
But then you don't really need a wildcard, at least globally.
Right, you don't need a global wildcard. Is that true? No. The allow list is for pre-existing images. So if you wanted, No, you're right. You don't need a global wildcard because global wildcard is the same as don't verify any pre-existing.
Yeah, I guess if I could ask, since maybe Jordan, you have it better in your head, do you mind pretending that you're in the kubelet config and just writing some YAML real fast into that way?
Yeah. So the sketch kubelet config, image credential verification policy. All names subject to change, and they're terrible. And I like to tell stories in my config names, but that's fine. Always. Let me think. So we've got the whatever. Right. So this effectively disables the feature.
Funnily enough, we actually have, I feel like there's a mirror between the existing image pull policy and what we're writing out, because you have never, you have if present instead of if not present, and then you have always.
Let's see. Never. I don't know. So this would be the default. Make kubelet check for images it doesn't understand. Like, so this is saying images that just showed up out of band for the kubelet that it doesn't know whether it was like anonymous or authenticated or what, like it's gonna have to do an image pull. And the first time it does this, that will tell the kubelet whether it was anonymous or with a node level credential or with a pod level credential. Like as soon as the first pod tries to run this pre-existing image, it will become understood by the kubelet, right? Peter, you can double check my
Yeah,
understanding.
no. The idea is like with the caching policy, like forever, basically, we'll have this entry in the kubelet.
Okay, so this is for pre-existing images which actually were anonymously pullable or pullable with node level credentials. This is like a one-time thing, I think, as long as that image exists on the node. Like it's pre-existing. The kubet's like, I don't know about this. You told me to re-verify it, so so maybe pre-existing is the wrong word. Like unknown images. We can figure out terminology later.
But this could really just be always, right? Because you would be re-verifying both the pre-existing and the new one, so it could just be one word.
And then the middle one is the the one where you have an allow list, right?
Ignore listed pre-existing, maybe.
Image credential. Say verification. Never verify. I'm trying to think how to put like allow list in the name of this thing, and it's awkward because it's a negative. We can improve names later, but never verify. I don't know. Like these are horrible names, but I think this is the spectrum. So never verify disables the feature. Never verify pre-existing images. We can figure out if there's a better way to refer to those, like unknown images, something like that. This would be the default. Never verify allow listed images, and then always verify. And maybe we could just say always verify.
Yeah. I mean, I still maintain it's like never, if not present, and always are the three, with like ignoring the existence of the allow list. Like the allow list modifies how if not present is done.
That's interesting. Was my microphone not working until now?
I hear you now. I didn't hear you a second ago.
Okay, I said this exact thing before. Okay, so at least now I know that my mic works now. Okay, good. All right.
Yeah, sorry.
Were you saying brilliant things that we were ignoring? I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I just didn't know. I probably tapped something that I shouldn't have. Okay, all right, good. We're on the same page now.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm not attached to any of these names. Why is invitation so bad? Let's see. And Google Docs decided to sign me out. That's awesome.
Wow.
I will say it would be my preference probably to compress 2 and 3 in this case and just have the allow list modify the pre-existing images case, but that's not a hard preference. So like the default would be never verify pre-existing images. The pre-existing image allow list would be empty.
But that's this is flipping the polarity, right? So like never verify pre-existing images is saying all pre-existing images get skipped. This one is saying only the things in the allow list get skipped and everything else gets checked.
So then I guess my preference would be to keep 3 and not 2, because you could express 3 by saying never verify allow listed. Like you could express the second case by just having an empty allow list.
Having empty default to mean star is squirrely.
Those tend to be very dangerous.
But no, because it's an allow list. So the empty list is saying, I do not allow any pre-existing image to not, or, oh, I see. So actually the default would be star.
Yeah. Like
Right.
that freaked me out.
Yeah, no, totally. I had that wrong.
Okay. All right. Like this is super, well, I don't know if it's super clear. It's clear to anyone who's spent like 4 hours going over this design. I still feel like pre-existing is a weird name. Like I like kind of unknown images or
Unverified.
never.
It would be a lot of verify.
Like these are images that the kubelet doesn't know about. Like it doesn't know
Right.
how they were pulled. Never verify. I don't know. We can
Mystery images.
think about names, but follow-up questions. There's a clear name for images. The kubelet doesn't know how they were pulled. Because when we get into like on node upgrade, if someone's node upgrade procedure like just deletes the kubelet directory and bumps the kubelet binary and restarts the node, like all the existing images are going to become unknown. And so like pre-existing, I mean, it is technically true, like it's pre-existing from the point of the next kubelet binary running, but unknown, I don't know.
I mean, I think generally the way that people do this is have some services start before, like, for instance, in OpenShift, the way we do this is when we're upgrading, we pre-pull the images that are going to be used for the, all of the infrastructure pieces before we do the upgrade. Then we do the upgrade and the images are already present. But we do that outside of the kubelet. We pull it with like Podman or something like that.
Yeah.
So the kubelet wouldn't have seen those credentials.
And so just in that case, you don't want those images to be, I guess, I don't know. What do you want to happen in that case, Peter? Like what configuration would you set for that OpenShift scenario?
Yeah, no, in that case, we would want to have the OpenShift registry that we pull it from be allow listed, because I think I mean, technically, if I'm being strict, I don't know. Yeah, we probably would want to allow list it in that case, because keeping the previous behavior of having cached the images so that on node startup, we're not reliant on the registry for the node to come up. I think that probably would be prioritized. If I was being really strict, I would actually say probably not have an allow list, and then redo the auth checks so that we know that the namespaces that are accessing these images are allowed to. But
yeah, I mean, I suspect the images that you're pulling in that case are like, I mean, there might be like the API server image and stuff, right?
Right.
So I doubt it's particularly private. And but do you really want to fail your upgrade because when you restart, Kubelet can't come up and bring up your new API?
And that's why it's pulled in the first place.
The big caveat here is that people's existing node upgrade policies, if they're upgrading in place and wiping kubelet bookkeeping directories, but keeping whatever images happened to be pulled to the node already, like that's going to flip images from ones the kubelet pulled and knew about to ones the kubelet doesn't know about and will now be subject to this, like whatever policy here. So
the unknown policy, right?
Yeah. So either you could adjust your in-place node upgrade to keep those bookkeeping files around, which you should. Or you could choose to be really strict and say like, nope, re-verify everything you don't know about. If it were me, I would probably adjust my node upgrade to keep the bookkeeping and continue to say, yeah, stuff we pre-pulled can just be used. Like, don't put the registry in the blocking path for it. That's what I would do. All right.
Yeah, I think this looks good, right?
Okay. Yeah.
For this at least for this action item, whatever it is. So I think that we can slowly move towards caching, which we've got like 15 minutes, and this is a big topic, but probably still worth starting on that. So yeah, I wonder. So an image was successful with an authentication means. So what does authentication actually mean? Like what do we cache? What we scenarios, right? We probably, I mean, like successful pool means that it was pooled with a cube secret, pooled with credentials. Right? We talked about this last time, right? We want to keep the track of the cube secrets so that we avoid the issues of having to re-authenticate with when a rotation happens, and we want to keep the credentials in case in case they just appear in a different secret, right? Now, do we keep a track of pools without any credentials, or do we keep a track of pools with node-wide credentials, and are we able to distinguish this from the previous ones?
So I think that the only ones we care about in the first iteration are images we pulled using a cube secret, image pull secret.
Mm.
All the other things, all the other ways you can pull are not partitioned by pod today.
Maybe the credentials would be right if a pod had some credentials which are shared among some of the pods, but not all of them. Like if you pull in with
But the
credentials
way a
from the
pod
secret,
specifies credentials is by referencing a cube secret.
right? But what if you have two different secrets which contain the same set of credentials? You don't want to repool, right? In that case.
Okay. So I think there's two questions you're asking.
Mm.
The first is, when do we consider an image to be pulled with authentication?
Right.
And I think the answer to that is, for purposes of this feature where we have to re-verify it, I think the answer is when we pull with a cube secret. Like we used credentials from a cube secret to pull the image, that image is pulled with credentials.
Right. But in the case, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
The second question is, what do we record as cache key, like credential cache keys for that image? And I think the answer there is we record the coordinates of the secret and the hash of the contents of the secret. I don't who exists. We like the only ways we can get credentials are from cube secrets, or anonymously, or node wide.
Right. Yeah, I guess what I meant here is, like, these would be exactly what you just described. These are just the coordinates of the secrets, and these are the credentials which were inside of the secret. So technically, they are the same thing.
Okay.
Authenticate. Oh wait. Guess.
And of course, there's the side thing where a runtime can have default creds, right, for particular connection points.
Yeah. So pulled without kubelet providing the runtime with any credential. Yeah. So that, I
Right.
mean, from the kubelet side, those look the same.
Exactly. It looks the same. Yeah.
Either actually anonymously or with runtime internal authentication. Yeah.
I guess, Jordan, the only thing there would be you would recommend that they admins disable that when they're wanting kubelet to be managing secrets. Yeah.
Well, if it's runtime, so are there runtime internal authentication setups that use pod specific information? Does the runtime
Not directly. We use the creds that we receive through a sequence of failures, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So who would make the decision? This is not functionality Cryo has. So in Containerd, like who would make the decision that pod A has access to those creds provided by Containerd versus pod B?
Right now we don't have that either, Peter. That would have to be
I see.
we would need to have some kind of a addition to the Cry API to have a policy, right?
Right. So I think the larger point is then that functionally to the kubelet, like that's a node level configuration that's set. And so like we don't have to worry about it here because the kubelet doesn't think about those creds and they're available to all pods on
That's right. That's why I said it's a side, Peter. It's sort of like when somebody loads an image. It's a side issue that we've got to figure out. Right. Because right now we're not marking, if you will, Peter, that we pulled it with a cred in the cache for the K8S namespace. We're not marking that at all. We're not keeping that information. That's probably
and I
something
think that is correct.
What's that?
I don't know, because I think it's correct to not keep that in the kubelet.
I agree. I agree. It's correct, and that's the way we're doing it today. We're not remembering that we got this from request from kubelet with a password, right?
So if I think I agree with Mike, if there were CRI level integrations that were using pod specific or namespace specific attributes, and we wanted to sort of propagate this re-verification down, having the kubelet be able to tell the CRI about that would require like an API change to pass down to the CRI, like pull this image with this re-verification check. But then, yeah, I don't know. If there aren't any cases like that today, I'm not really worried about it today, but it's something to keep in mind if we see stuff like that cropping up in the future.
I mean, another way to do it, once we got this cleaned up, another way to do it would be just to have a CRI policy that states only images that we loaded should be, accessible for us. Basically a user ID kind of, addition to the K8S namespace such that only kubelet requests, would be replied back in the.
I have a question about like optimistic credential use. If I've got an image that actually can be pulled anonymously, but isn't on the node yet, let's write this down. I think this will be a good test to add. I expect this will be thorny, and I don't want to forget about it. So the setup is there's an image that can be pulled anonymously. I have one pod in a namespace that happens to have an image pull secret for like a registry-wide credential.
Yeah.
And that pod tries to run the anonymously pullable image. will the kubelet send the credential? Because it's like, well, you had a pull secret for this whole registry, which matches the registry where this image is coming from. So I'm not even going to try to pull it anonymously. I'm just going to send the credential you said was for this registry. And then the pull will succeed because the image is pullable with or without authentication. So the pull succeeds. Now the kubelet thinks that that image requires credentials.
Not really, because we always pull with anonymous first.
Do we? Oh, excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, the ensure process already tries anonymous.
Okay, great.
So
Still,
that's why if you were to look at the code, that's why if it ever pulls it with the secret first, we know that it pulled it anonymously, failed, and then
Okay.
pulled it right
okay,
with the secret from the first registry.
great.
Notice I
That's-
said the first registry.
That's
And then
really
later, you could request the same image from a different registry and get it anonymously, right?
Yeah.
And we remember now the anonymous request from the other registry. So now we've got both. We've got a pull from a private registry with the secret, right? A cache maybe of Nginx, let's call it. And then we've got an anonymous Nginx pull from a different non-private repo. Okay. It could be the same registry, but a different repo, the public repo. Right?
yeah. I'm sorry. I'm using registry imprecisely. I'm sure. You have an image spec, and you
Yeah.
have a pull secret for the whole registry. Is
Yes.
registry? Sorry, I'm using it imprecisely. I'm sure. Which is the
No,
domain?
that's okay. You're right. You can log on to get around the anonymous count issues.
Um,
And that we support that in the container runtime. Yes. Even when you try an anonymous pull, we can log in anyway to get around the creds issue. I'm sorry, the count of pulls issue. But when we do an image, so there's two parts of it, Jordan. That are important here. There's the image status check for the ensure process to find out if the image is local, right? And that's not on a registry basis. That's the image,
okay.
right? And then once we know that we don't have it local, right, it's not present, then we need to go off and try to pull it. And we do that with creds, right? And the registry prefix, blah, blah, right? And the tag, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
That disconnected part, right?
Yep.
It's the status of the image is being disconnected from the creds and stuff like that. That's what I'm saying. We need an additional policy to tell the runtimes, right, what needs to happen with these images. Are they to be treated as if they could be anonymous, or if they were pulled with the cred from a private repo? Is that, inviolate against any other request on the status of the image? Because then we would be saying, no, it's not present for you because you're asking, right, within the context of a certain credit, right?
Mhm.
As opposed to in the context of is it there or not at all.
I'm not sure I follow all of the levels. You have it much more in your head. This is the setup and this is the scenario. I just want to make sure works.
Yeah, a nice truth table would help here. Yeah.
Yeah. So misidentifying things that actually should be anonymously usable as requiring credential. So if we do always pull anonymous first at the kubelet level, so the kubelet is aware that, oh yeah, this was totally fine, then that covers it. I could see someone optimizing that away in the future and being like, well, we were gonna try to pull from example.com and I've got a
Already got it. It's anonymous. That's what we're doing today. As soon as you pull it successfully one time with an image, we note that in the cache. It's available anonymously now.
Right, but if the very first time the kubelet tries to pull it, it used the credentials, then it would get confused. And it sounds like you're
I'm
saying
not
we
getting
don't do that-
confused. I'm changing it at that point in time with the current logic in the code. It literally goes from being a requires creds to no longer requires creds once you successfully pull it from kubelet anonymously.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that this
And it needs to be
scenario-
tested. Yeah.
Yep. And at this point, I actually, for the step B, like I would actually be okay with kubelet saying, well, the last time we pulled this, we actually did need to use creds, so now we're going to need to re-verify without creds.
And then go
As
back.
soon as it re-verifies without creds, it flips
Right.
the image like, oh yeah, this is fine to be anonymous. That's fine.
And that sort of goes into the why we had a timeout that they're working on. For how long would anonymous last? Because
Yeah.
maybe you'll need a cred in the future, right?
Yeah. Yep. So as long as this step succeeds, I don't care if it succeeds because when the kubelet did this first pull, it first tried to do anonymously and realized it was anonymous. That would be fine. Or if when it tries to do the second pull, it says, well, I need to verify that you can be accessed anonymously. Either of those is
Yes,
fine.
either of those is good.
Yep. All right, cool. We are out of time.
All right.
I think, were there other questions? Well, we're out of time.
Yeah, we're out of time, but I think there's one interesting part, which is where do we actually write that we were trying to pull. But we can talk about it
This
some
bit.
other time, I think.
Are folks good to meet the same time next week?
I should check before I say yes, but this overlaps working group LTS like every other Tuesday.
It's a bit early.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, no, I just failed to look at the time.
Mo and I
never have
joined
any
10
meetings
minutes late.
before 9, and I was, oh man, oh no.
Mo and I joined 10 minutes late, and we both felt really bad. I don't know. I can do like half an hour. It sounds like this is like a barely workable time for us.
If it makes it easier, at least for my schedule, times around the current time tend to never have meetings because all my coworkers are on the West Coast, so they're asleep.
Same here.
Therefore, I can basically any other day I can do because it doesn't conflict with working group LTS.
Same here, actually.
Okay, so Jordan and I are very open. I think Stana, you're probably fine too because you're.
Yeah, I'm good. So like, if Wednesday works at the same time for you, it's fine, I think.
So I think Mike.
Or like half an hour later, maybe. Would that work?
Yeah. Half an hour later tomorrow, or a week from tomorrow.
On Wednesday, recurring. Sounds good.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all, and have a great day.
All right.